Hi, how are you? Thanks for joining the session today. I know that it's very early in the morning in Amsterdam, Europe, and it's actually early evening here in Singapore. So I'm hoping everyone's staying indoors and safe, given the world's gone a bit crazy today in the last few weeks. So thank you for joining me in terms of enabling me to share what we've been working on in terms of smart cities of the future. A little bit about myself. I've been working in Lendlease in Asia now for over 9 years. I'm from Australia and I've been working in the real estate industry for almost 20 years. I started off in retail and I basically found the love for development. And so I moved to Singapore 10 years ago, wanted to work around building great places in Asia, and now I am in an innovation role, but also a global role in Lendlease to look at urban regeneration and how we're approaching it consistently and applying some of the smarts that we have in the industry and the community together. So when it comes to smart states and smart cities, what we always ask ourselves before we get into the thick of the technology and the answers and the solutions is really, right now we're in a rush to build smart cities and it's a huge catchphrase at the moment. But are we really starting with the right questions? Are we really asking ourselves what value are we trying to achieve? So it's really important to take check of what the objectives are, what the real value that we're trying to create for our customers and our people and the future is, and see how these decisions that we are making, spending some time around the attention around the customers' decisions and listening to really who are the thought leaders in our businesses and in our industry that we can look to get inspiration for. So my question is, when it comes to technology, PropTech, ConTech, and the topics that we all are talking about right now, are we using the technology and the data to really be inclusive? Are we providing the right service quality to the people and improving the quality of life for the communities? And are we really delivering the smart city promise? So what we have heard about smart cities is that, we want to make smart communities and buildings and smart solutions work for a lot of customers and experiences. So what questions are we asking? What is smart city? What is a smart city? And these are just quotes that we've extracted in the community right now. So they talk about the smart city using technology and data to enhance livability, workability, sustainability. We talk about digital technology to actually improve a person's life, quality of life, and better decision making. We also talk about how the city is evolving when it comes to promoting innovations and tech, enhancing startups, enhancing the way we actually operate, making sure that we reduce waste and costs and make better decisions around that. So smart cities is all about that. How do we actually create a really tangible pipeline of approaches? For us, we talk about the people first. We talk about the ecosystem that we're in, real estate, PropTech, ConTech, FinTech, Ecotech. We talk about that as in the customers at the heart of it. Where can we add value? What is the human and social capital, the infrastructure and the disruptive technology that's coming? How does it impact into the long-term circular economy? Are we actually using and leveraging the existing infrastructure that we have around the share economy and the experiences? And then how do we actually use the process of governance to include the community, include government bodies, include different organizations who are driving the same cause to work together to have the same objective achieved? For us, it's the data is clear. 68% of the world population is projected to be living in urban areas by 2050. If you're living in Asia, such as now, it's really already over 80%. So in the first half of 2019, we saw that global PropTech has hit a huge point where it's been the highest record in terms of investment than ever. And so what does that mean? How are we actually proactively working together to address it? And this is the questions that we all have to ask ourselves. Are we really being smart about our smart approaches? And yes, technology is everywhere. We're inundated by traffic controls, AI systems, smart buses, smart light sensors and whatnot. So you can see the world is quite busy and there is so much noise. So in the whole disruption of social innovation and blockchain, cloud computing, big data, in IoT system, the opportunities of working together and consolidating this in terms of a very clear system, what's good, from the good, and same, but different. So when it comes to the Smart Cities tapestry, we've been looking at very clear categories. When it comes to smart mobility, how does our customers access our places? How do we ensure that safety and the heart of safety is at the front of mind? How do we ensure those decisions are very, very clear when it comes to impact on energy, waste and water? How do we make sure our buildings are living and they're live and they're also an ecosystem on their own and they're evolving? How do we ensure that it's, integrated with the rest of the city when it comes to logistics, management and automated systems? How do we embody that everyday lives, especially particularly now as we're very concerned about the virus at hand? How do we ensure that we're proactively managing our health and our finances and our manufacturing businesses and partnerships? How do we ensure that the government is also supporting those infrastructure? And then how do we engage you as a customer in the community to ensure that it's creating value? So when it comes to data, there is a lot of data. We categorize it around static data and dynamic data. And the very clear position around static data is that there's a lot of data that we have that is quite fluid. There's energy consumption, there's OPEX on our buildings, there's performance utilities, operational efficiencies. I'm not talking about anything new. This is all existing data in all the assets and buildings that we interact with. How do we actually create realistic, meaningful KPIs based on the data that we have? The dynamic data is about pretty much the world that we live in outside the buildings. And a lot of that is how we interact with the rest of the world. In the earlier 21st century, when it comes to traffic, how we approach traffic is that we build more roads, we add in another lane when it comes to the highway, and it becomes a bigger problem as you create a solution to a problem. So if you talk about the way we approached in the early 1990s is we create more roads, more car parks, then you create more traffic into the CBD areas, urban areas. We create more congestion, more cars on the roads, more traffic and whatnot. But in today's day, we can actually now proactively leverage infrastructure. We can actually question, do we really need to own cars? Do we need to actually create more lanes? Is creating more car parks the solution? And the answer is definitely no, because we have the share economy. So that's a small example of dynamic data that we can actually extract from existing infrastructure, such as heat mapping, live data, how our customers are using our buildings, how they're accessing our buildings, what are the uses, and what are the patterns that we can draw out of it, whether it's in an office building like we are in, like I am in right now, or whether it's a community and how people are accessing different services and facilities. It's very clear. So the dynamic data that we categorize and the approach to it needs to be very succinct, and it needs to actually have a very clear, specific benchmark in terms of what we're trying to achieve when it comes to this technology. So the opportunities now is that there is new bargain. What are the spaces, logistics? How do we actually mind map the day in the life of a customer? How do we include the civic and the community when it comes to feedback and capturing that data? And then what are the background work that we can do when it comes to improving design, and when it comes to management and operations? So these are some of the emerging ideas that's coming up. So when it comes to some of those technology and infrastructure in our systems, those services and those data are really, really important to us. The ability for us as a company at the moment is that we do have quite a diverse and decent pipeline in order for us to have live test beds of innovation precincts. So technology needs to be human and it needs to be very much customer centric. We forget sometimes that embedding technology, that sometimes you're taking out the human element of it. So when it comes to our customers, we categorize these customers into segments of collecting intimate experiences that is tech enabled. We focus on older residents when it comes to accessibility. When it comes to working and professionals, how to create that network of co-working ecosystem, how to create and evolve the flexibility and the workplace thought leadership around corporate companies, how do we actually influence young families to ensure that their lifestyle is improved and enhanced, how do we facilitate the community to be open around education and information and knowledge, and then how can we partner with a cohesive startup community to make sure that we are not only the experts solving all these solutions and these problems and these challenges. A day in the life of my life is at the moment is, for those who don't know me, I have 3 kids under 5 years old. So I always think about my life outside work, and this is my weekends. I have the 3 kids on me. I try to access them more. I try to do my groceries. I try to get by, and sometimes it's just very difficult. When I map my challenges in moving around, often enough I have to actually eliminate things, like I have to remove the pram, I have to carry the 2 kids on my back and my front. When I'm working from home, I need to make sure that it's flexible and the technology is in sync for me to be able to look after my kid. I have a baby that's very young and she's still nursing. So how do I actually am empowered as an individual, as a mother, as a professional, to ensure that I am doing my best? And this is about mapping what that customer journey is. We have also approached, when it comes to smart design, not just the technology first. The technology is an enabler. So what we've done is, for example, we've partnered with this disabled organization in Singapore here, and we've worked with architects and different type of partners in the community to actually really work. What's the measurements when it comes to the daily user experiences when it comes to accessibility? It comes to a point where we actually looked at designs and codes and all the universal design accessibility rules in our life, and we actually realized that a lot of these rules are not that accessible. So really, when it comes to smart communities, smart designs and sustainable development, really, are we really that smart? So we actually partnered with the Disabled People's Association as ambassadors to test how smart our precincts are. We looked at, them accessing our buildings, from going to public transport to accessing amenities. We looked at barriers to access such as steps, pavements, ramps, doors, entries, and we actually got from the end user and mapped what are the pain that they're experiencing. Can then technology improve that? But we look at the design from a user end perspective. This is an example where we need to get better at getting customer engagement, and this is real life. So this is an example of us trialing this pilot with more than 50 people in the community to give us live user experience feedback, and we are hoping to roll this out globally. So that comes to the civic mind. Precincts such as this have a collective intelligence when it comes to urban technology. How do we harmonize it to create this innovation, and how do we actually leverage it and scale it? This is the big question they're trying to address when it comes to smart design. How do we create that creative citizenship and engage participation through those consumers and those environments? An example that I gave earlier, it's so important, because a lot of the organization that we talk to, they look at the technology first, and we need to ensure that we are asking the right questions, looking at the customer perspective first. There's a lot of ways that we are looking at to empower the city through AI, and these are some of the citizen experiences, employee experiences that we're looking at, and the insights that we are turning real life data into real meaningful solutions, that it's accessible, is focused on security and safety. A lot of the visual analytics that we are working through whether we actually really need them, because we also have to protect individual privacy as well. So video cameras and data analytics, they can only go so far, but what is the boundaries here? And it's not a clear-cut black and white answer. So it's really, really clear and important to make sure that what value are you trying to create? What are you thinking in terms of this design, and what are you trying to generate when it comes to the personal experiences? So with us, we're working through this digital master plan on applying segments of our AI-empowered data to actually make better decisions. In terms of digital twins, we're looking at using digital and physical. And I know earlier this morning that you spoke about a bit about digital twins. And this is the new world. So the digital and physical world are operating together. And how do we build, how do we design, how we manage, how do we control has better outcomes when you're mirroring the physical world with the digital world. When it comes to those challenges, it's really important to also ask ourselves, are we really prepared to have that embedment? So when you talk about technology, smarts, the whys and the how we're going to do it, it's really important. And it's asking us really, are our people really, really ready to have the culture change? And if they are, and if they're not, actually, what are we going to do about it? And it's really important because the resistance to change is about the fear, the not knowing, and also the lack of resources and preparation for change management that we are prepared to do. So when it comes to smart, how do we map that out? We map it out through a lot of the users that we work with, governments, the bodies, when it comes to supply chain globally, how we're approaching it, who are the startup incubators that we're focusing on, and some of the partnerships that you may not have in mind, like needs to be engaged. So as you can see here in my presentation, we're working with the telecom providers. We're working with energy providers. We're working about, how do we achieve carbon neutral, carbon positive on our communities in our states? How do we actually build much more efficiently? Government bodies, digital agencies, banks, insurance companies. The list goes on. Even the partnerships like our retailers and our tenants are really important when it comes to this engagement. So it's about engaging the citizen as a user to ensure that we are creating the right framework in our digital landscape and in our ecosystem when it comes to our topology on smart estates. I mentioned earlier about data. That's a huge, huge challenge at the moment to address and find the boundaries to, and not everyone has the answers. And we are on a journey. When it comes to sustainability, it's really important to ensure that we are designing smarter for smarter communities and the diversity that we approach to it. How do we link the young and the old and different demographics in our design? How do we ensure that when we're embedding technology that they're user-friendly to the older generation and also to the younger? How do we ensure that it's cohesive and fair? And how do we curate it so that we're perpetually reviewing how we can evolve and change the solutions? Changing mindset is so important. So I mentioned that early. Like when it comes to this, I grew up with this computer. It's one of my first computers. And obviously, like times have changed, and now I watch my kids use technology. It's very different. So this is what I know, then this is what is familiar. But when it comes to kids these days, they are very, very much, my 12-month-old baby can pick up my phone and iPad and actually flick through things that she wants to get to. She's only 12 months old, and yet she, by the next generation, has already seen that the world's changing, and she's already realigning what her expectation is and her experience is. And the biggest key in my observation here is that it's very much intuitive. So when it comes to change and technology, how you're embedding it, it needs to be very much intuitive, because if it's not intuitive as much as my 12-month-old or my 1-year-old or my 4-year-old using it on the iPad, then really, are you really getting the solution right? If you're spending 10 minutes to download something and register the app or whatnot, is that the right solution? Are you creating an enhanced experience, or are you just creating another layer of technology? So we need to make sure that when it comes to the digital natives, you observe what are the actual, what is those behaviors, and if it's easy and intuitive, then your solution is right. If you need to train the next generation, then you know that there's complications and pain there already. So it's really important to test that with a view that you can actually embed that into the next generation and make sure that it's very easy for them to use. So when it comes to digital integration, we want to make sure that we're taking out the pain and not adding more pain. I know that sounds very simple and common sense, but unfortunately, a lot of the experiences that we have had when applying technology and smarts into a lot of those solutions, it's actually not enhancing the customer experience. It is improving the owners or the asset manager or the operator's visibility of data and whatnot, but when it comes to the customer, are we really solving the pain point of our customer, not just our businesses? And that's really important to actually understand and make clear and reiterate. So when it comes to smart futures and smart style stories, we like to focus on a very much 6 key clear pillars. How do we ensure that transportation accessibility is integrated, underpinning every decision that we make, making it more accessible for our customers, no matter who you are, whether you're wheelchair bound, or whether you're like pram bound like I am in most of my travels. How do you ensure that you personalize those experiences? How do you engage the neighbor and integrate the community? Even the simple thing is Wi-Fi right now is so not integrated in any of the precincts I've visited. How do we ensure that we have very clear KPIs and benchmarks when it comes to managing our estates in our precincts? And that is not just about reading some numbers and reducing waste or reducing OPEX. It's about really clear contributions into the future. And then how do we actually measure this to ensure that the individual is safe, we're protecting our individual rights and our security? And then in terms of that technology, how do we ensure that it's sustainable, it's environmental friendly, it's focusing on wellness and well-being? Because that is more relevant than it is today than it has ever been. So underpinning this, the digital communications, connectivity, making sure that our infrastructure is ready, and enabling all the people and places and experience to be enhanced is very key. When it comes to customer-centric strategies, we want to be smart, we want to be connected, we want to be integrated, we want to make sure we're enhancing and adding value to lifestyle and communities, and we're enriching those experiences through the users. When it comes to residents and the homes that we're building in our communities, what is the emotional convenience and connection that I am actually doing when it comes to that connection, that communication, that sharing, enabling those customers to be future ready? What is the future look like when it comes to the infrastructure? 5G is everyone's talking about at the moment, but what is beyond 5G? Are we future-proof as an organisation? Are we future-proof in terms of infrastructure and design? Have we integrated those design into all the technology? So it's not talking about the office solution. It's not talking about another app for the shopping mall, it's another app for your home, another app for your office. It's a community belongingness and integration. How does that add into the lifestyle? And then how do we actually enrich your experiences when it comes to simplification? Simplification is not simple. And how do we now digest all that technology by simplifying it? And that's the biggest challenge when it comes to smart cities right now, that we are looking at creating the best places, creating the lasting legacy to differentiate, but also generating revenue, driving sales, driving a lot of outcomes, and like really leaving a legacy. So for us, we want to create the best places. We want to make sure that the customer is really at the heart of it. The infrastructure is future-proof, and it's also seamless and integrated, and it's human-centric. So for me, I do have a dream. When it comes to collaboration, the ecosystem and the actual community needs to be very clear. We want to partner with a lot of organisations, not just ourselves and not just the startups that we're working on right now, but also government bodies, community bodies, customer bodies, creating better, smarter communities on operating smarter outcomes and delivering a very clear, sustainable future. Because for me, as Yoda says, there's not do or don't, there's no try. And my kids, when I put my hat on as a mother, I definitely can influence the future for my kids. And it's very clear that I need to address these when it comes to sustainable design. And that's all I have for now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Helen, for that very interesting presentation. We have a few questions that have come in for you. So the first one, can you describe one of Lendlease's best examples of what you've presented, such as is Barangaroo South project in Sydney truly a carbon neutral project?
Yes, and that's a very good question. When we were approaching the design of Barangaroo a few years ago, we did really challenge ourselves in creating a carbon neutral precinct. And we had no idea how to get there. But through the whole pilot, and this was quite a few years ago, so through the pilot of the digital twin and how we enhance the actually value proposition of the BIM model, how do we integrate that in terms of our processes during design, construction, and delivery. And then we have an internal team that looks at the utilities and the living utilities model, and how do we actually ensure that we're managing it for the life cycle of the asset and the precinct. And it is 100% now carbon neutral, and we achieved that. But at the time of the vision, we did not know how we were going to get there. So sometimes it's about having that clear goal. The team did a lot of work over the years to kind of get to that goal, and now we have a infrastructure where we can bed and scale. And yes, there's a lot of learnings along the way. So right now we are looking at pushing the boundaries around that. When it comes to construction, we are looking at not only technologies, but how we can actually create that carbon neutral in our construction process goal. But now we're even now talking about how do we even push the boundary for carbon positive. And there is a few things in the business that we're working through, those initiatives right now that we're not ready to share yet, but we are going to get there, and we're hoping to get there very soon, sooner than later.
Perfect. Thank you, Helen. Another question that's come through. Smart cities are the future of urban areas. Can you list one or two examples of Internet of Things solutions you were excited about recently?
Yes, I've been very excited about. So we have recently in one of our large projects in Asia, have talked to one of our clear long-term partners and clients, SoftBank. And recently they've been piloting a division of them, a technology that is IoT solution, but it's not only IoT, it's agnostic to a lot of other solutions in the market. They're now trialing it in a live precinct at the moment, and I can't talk much about it, but essentially it's they call it the array of things. And the array of things is that it's not just dealing with a set data point. So if I were to look at the IoT solution, it's actually agnostic to collecting any data. So the solution is that they've piloted across a city, and they've piloted and put it in like 100 of the sensors in that city. And when they're collecting the data, they're collecting people data, they're collecting the data from the weather and climate, they're forecasting climate, they're collecting security data so they can actively collect what are the threats in the whole space. They're also collecting energy consumed in the space. They're collecting like a whole sense and array of data. And then using that raw data, they're learning and actually showing that you can actually create better things, better decisions when it comes to logistic management of traffic, logistic management of safety solutions, security, deployment of even weather patterns and weather management systems. And so The exciting thing about this IoT platform is that it's agnostic in the data it's collecting and the decisions that you can make from that data. It's not about installing 5 different infrastructure, 5 different technology. It's just one. And I'm very excited. We are looking at trialing that on our sites, and I can't wait to share that in the near future.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Helen. We did have some other questions that are coming in right now, but we're running a little bit over time and just conscious of everyone's time this morning. It's been a great presentation. Thank you so much. And one thing, just to let you know about how good your presentation was, we've had a request from the previous speaker to be introduced to you and everything. So it's been great talks, great information sharing and everything. Thank you so much.
Yeah, with a short amount of time, I can't go into more detail, but I would love to connect and share. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. And
Cheers.
everyone who has joined in, thank you also for joining in this morning. We hope that you've enjoyed the presentation as much as we did, and that you also plan to join us for our next presenter, which is starting up in around 30 minutes. It will be Wilco Lindslag, who is a senior manager in KPMG's Innovation Advisory. Thank you very much, and hope to see you at a later presentation.